Okay. Well, hello again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for one of our conservation education workshops. I'm Bernie Traversari. I'm the managing director of the Society for Conservation Biology North America, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's workshop. I'm going to be giving a brief introduction of what SCBNA is, what we do. I'm going to briefly introduce our presenters, and then I'm going to leave the majority of today's session for our actual hands-on activities. So bear with me for just a few minutes. Okay, so for those of you that are unfamiliar with SCBNA, we are a professional science society dedicated to advancing the science and practice of conserving Earth's biological diversity. In other words, we try to advance conservation practice in our region, and we support everyone and anyone engaged in conservation. We do that in a variety of different ways. We offer professional development opportunities like today's workshop, along with policy webinars and student affairs workshops. We also have publications, both research and otherwise, that are available for our members to publish their science and their work on. And then we also host our biannual conference, the next iteration of which will be taking place this summer in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. All in an effort to connect people engaged in conservation and to provide them with the resources they need to do their work. As I always like to do at the beginning of our workshops, I encourage everyone who's present to become a member of SCBNA if you're not already a member. You do not have to pay to become one. We have an associate membership now that is free to anyone, and I'll be putting information down in the chat after my introduction, so you can look at that online. Otherwise, if you have your phone, you're free to scan the QR code on the screen, and it'll take you directly to our membership page. Okay, so one other thing that I really like to mention at the beginning of our workshops is that everything we do at SCBNA is volunteer-led. We have a number of volunteer-led standing committees that prepare all of our virtual programming, and that's the case as well with today's workshop. This workshop was coordinated by SCBNA's Education Committee, which seeks to build capacity for educators within our society through different ways, including skill building workshops, other development opportunities, and social and networking events. This is a fantastic team of people led by our Vice President of Education, Dr. Stephanie Clements. Dr. Clements wasn't able to join us today, or she might be joining us in a few minutes. But I know we have a few members of the committee here, so thank you all so much for your work in helping prepare today's workshop. I also like to remind folks that if you would like to help us design future workshops, we are always looking for people to join our standing committee. So please, if you want to join the education committee specifically, the email address is on the screen. Send us an email. We'll be happy to invite you to our next meeting. And if you're interested in joining any of our other committees, please send us an email as well, and we'll invite you to those meetings too. I also like to remind folks that we do have other virtual programming opportunities coming up over the next few weeks and months. We are currently working on additional conservation education workshops. We are also requesting proposals for new workshops to take place over the next few months. Anyone who's in our meeting today is welcome to submit a proposal if you would like to lead a workshop in the future. Otherwise, I encourage you all to just be on the lookout for additional opportunities through our social media channels and websites. And though we don't have any upcoming conservation education workshops, we do have other virtual opportunities, including a joint webinar with the Society for Ecological Restoration that's going to feature one of the projects that are that's going to be shared during our joint conference this summer. And then we also have a virtual webinar hosted by our Student Affairs Committee that's going to focus specifically on abstract preparation. We do have our call for abstracts for the conference open and ongoing until mid-March. So that would be a really good webinar for you to attend if you're planning on submitting an abstract for the conference. Okay, the last little bit before I shut up. I just wanted to briefly introduce our presenters for today. We have an amazing team from the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies and their Project Wild initiative here to lead today's workshop. Elena, Mark, Kathleen, thank you all so much for being here today and for preparing today's session. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to our activities.
Right. Thank you so much and welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to meet you. Um, Bear with me as I share my screen. Okay, so today our talk is a very creative title, Wildlife Education with Project Wild. And we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves really quickly. I'll start first. My name is Elena Takaki, and I am the Director of Leadership and Conservation Education at the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. And I've been with them since 2017. And one of the programs that I manage is Project Wild, and it's really been a dream of mine to work on Project Wild. I've over 25 years in the environmental education community, and I will turn it over to Mark to introduce himself.
Yes, I'm Mark Lefebvre, Senior Program Manager for the Project Wild program, also with the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. And I've been working for the National Office of Project Wild for 24 years now. So it's been a lifelong passion and love of mine. Kathleen?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathleen Freeman. I'm the Project Wild Program Associate with the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, and I'm new to the team. I guess, in my third year now. And before that, I've been an environmental educator in non-formal settings throughout the country, Ohio, Virginia, North Carolina, Hawaii, been all over, and now in the DC area. So happy to be part of the team because I've been using Project Wild for years. So this is really great. Happy to be here today.
Thanks, Kathleen. So for today, we've got three goals for you. First of all, we want to describe what Project Wild is and how it could be relevant to the work that you do. We want to identify and go through three specific activities and other resources from Project Wild that you can use in your work, centering around education and outreach. And also explain to you how you can access additional training, materials, and online resources that we have. So first, we're going to do a little overview of Project Wild. We're going to go right into three activities. I hope you came prepared, and I hope you're ready to have some fun and move around because that is what we do at Project Wild. We're going to go over some of our online courses and resources, and then next steps. Um, for those of you that aren't familiar with Project Wild, we are a national and international program and administered by the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. So state wildlife management agencies are our members, basically. And we're sponsored in 49 of the 50 states, Puerto Rico, Canada, and Japan. Our goals are to create awareness about wildlife and wildlife management, knowledge, content knowledge about wildlife, developing skills, not just in wildlife management, but educate environmental education and taking action as well. And then having kids develop a commitment to caring for wildlife and natural areas. And we believe that all of these will lead to informed decisions that future adults will make about wildlife management and also foster responsible behavior towards the environment through constructive actions. These are our four main guides. We do have some other supplementary guides as well, but Project Wild, the one at the top there, is our main guide. We also have Aquatic Wild, which focuses on aquatic wildlife, Flying Wild, which focuses on birds, and then Growing Up Wild, which is, we call them our wee wild ones, um, focuses on ages 3 through 7. Um, we do pre-K through 12th grade. All of our activity guides that you see here, they are designed for educators. So they have full lesson plans. They are all aligned to the standards. They're cross-curricular and they're designed to be supplementary, especially in today's world of education. And I used to teach middle school and high school. Educators are so jam-packed and oftentimes the industry might even be very specific about what they are teaching on specific days. So, but our activities are designed so that they can be supplementary. You can throw in an activity here and there, or they could be designed to cover a whole week or 2 weeks of learning for students. There are 3 sections in each of our guides. There's ecological knowledge, which you might consider like the content, background knowledge, the biology, if you will, social and political knowledge about wildlife, and then sustaining fish and wildlife resources. And you can visit us for more information at www.projectwild.org, where you can find a ton of more information. But I want to get right into the activities and get you familiar with Project Wild if you're not already. And so I will hand it over to Mark.
All right, thank you. And Elena, I'll just tell you next slide each time. I think you have the controls there. Great. Okay. But first, let me make sure I can see your screen. There it is. Okay. So yes, I want to learn about first impressions you have about different kinds of animals. And so next slide, please. I'm going to show you a picture of an animal, and I want you to type into the chat a 1, a 2, or a 3. Does the animal bring a feeling to you that is best represented by the frowny face, or the face with neither a frown or a smile, or the smiley face? Okay, and here comes the first one. Next slide. Okay, so type into the chat 1, 2, or 3. Frowny face, neutral face, smiley face. Ooh, lots of 3s and some 2s. Okay, we'll go 1. All right. So a lot of people are smiling at this jackrabbit. All right. Let's try another animal. Wait, but before we go, the next slide is a photo of a snake. And just so you know, for the next 60 seconds or so, there'll be a snake photo on your screen. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, there you go. Okay. So again, 1, 2, or 3 for this rattlesnake. Lots of 3s. Some 2s. Okay. Okay. So I would say similar to the jackrabbit across the board, but especially a lot of 3s and 2s, and there was a 1. All right, we're going to keep going here. Next slide. Okay, 3, 2, or 1. The coyote. Lots of 3s. Okay, great. Smiley faces for coyote for sure. Okay, but not everybody's smiling with the coyote. Okay, next slide. We have a bat. All right, we have more 3s pouring in. 3s, a 1, a 3, another 3. Okay, now, since many of you are able to use words well, I'm going to invite you on this next round, and next slide, please, to type the first word or words, so it could be a word or a short phrase, that comes to mind when you see the animal. Next slide, please. Javelina. What's the first thought, the first word that comes to mind when you see a javelina? Cool. Arizona? Keystone. Aw, arid. Arizona. Difficult to spell. Snuffing for truffles. Funny. All right, let's try another one. Next slide. Okay, we have pigs, in particular feral pigs. What words come to mind? Invasive, scary, cute, wrecking balls, invasive, busy, invasive. Uh-oh. Okay. Destructive. Oink. All right. Let's go on to the next slide. The deer tick. Wild. Wild. I don't know if that's the deer tick or the feral pigs, but oh, dangerous, Lyme, disease, yuck, ouch, nope. Tweezers, vector, sketchy, danger, bad, yikes, danger. Okay, well, intimidating. So, next slide, please. So what we were just doing is collecting your first impressions, which is also the name of one of our Project Wild activities for elementary school, for lower elementary and upper elementary. In first impressions, and please go on to the next slide. I'm going to zoom in a little on this first top of this page of the activity page, and you will get a copy of this soon. We'll give you a link that you can download the activity with. In this activity, as you can see in the methods there on the left, students respond to a variety of images to study contributions of a range of animals. And so we're going through the first part of the procedures in this activity and just getting responses, collecting those first impressions, and as the educator, somehow recording those first impressions. And we're also respecting each other's feelings about those first impressions. And before the activity is over, which might be the next day or the next week or several days later, you students will have a chance to research more about some of these species, and then we'll collect more impressions you have about them, but not your first impressions, your more informed impressions. And we'll compare how people's feelings and perceptions about these different species of wildlife, that is, wild animals, changed or not from your first impression to once you learn more about them. You'll learn about their ecological role. You might learn about their cultural significance. You might learn about cultural differences in different parts of the world. You know, like a bat, for example, might bring some feelings of fear at first, but then when we learn about their about interacting with bats and the relative safety of people and bats, and or perhaps that, in some parts of the world like China, bats are often seen as symbols of good luck. Well, our impressions might change. So next slide, please. Taking a look at the bottom of that page for first impressions, the first page of the activity. And Project Wild publications are composed primarily of these activities. We call them activities, and a lot of people would call them lessons or lesson plans. They're written like lesson plans that are well crafted that educators use, but also they're written in a way that people who are not professional educators can also use them. Okay, and so in this activity, first impressions, we know that looking on the left-hand column there, that the activity time is going to be about 2 20-minute sessions, with probably some time in between for students' homework where they're researching, and that any number of students can participate. That's our people power, typically done indoors, although nearly all Project Wild activities, or I should say almost all of them, have an outdoor component. This is more of an exception. And then we explain to those who really want to dig in deep, which of the conceptual ideas that make up Project Wild does this connect to? Lena mentioned the ecological knowledge, the social and political knowledge, and the sustaining fish and wildlife resources. Well, this activity is within the realm of social and political knowledge, and it examines cultural differences in how we perceive animals, and how we might value them as a society. We'll give you terms to know, that is the key definitions, and then connections to additional resources in the book, the appendices. And Elena, can you back up quickly, just one slide? You can see that on the top half of the page, the background section started. And so every educator conducting this activity gets some basic information to help them get going, whether they have any expertise in the subject area or not. Okay, Elena, if you could skip ahead 2 slides. So that was from the Project Wild K through 12 curriculum and activity guide. And I also wanted to mention that we have an early childhood version of the same activity, First Impressions, from Growing Up Wild. And it's the purpose of the activity is a bit different. The emphasis is more on understanding that people have different feelings, different values around wildlife. And also understanding at a basic level that our first reaction to an animal might change. We might change our feelings about the animal. And then we collect the first impressions and we learn more about them over the course of days. And then we examine our feelings about the animals again. Next slide, please. And so at the early childhood level, a really great way to represent the different feelings, say a class may have, is to create a bar graph where each sticky note represents one of the learners, one of the children, and they might write their name on it or some other representation of themselves. Next slide. So I mentioned earlier the activity you're going to get a copy of, that's from our main publication that most people know us by. We often refer to it as the Terrestrial Guide. That's the Project Wild K through 12 Curriculum and Activity Guide. And Kathleen, thank you for the time info. 2 minutes, okay. Next slide. Okay, and also I want to speak a moment about if you were to use first impression at a booth. And what do I mean by a booth? Well, imagine a tabletop setup, for example. Perhaps you're setting up a table at science night, at a local elementary school, or you're attending an Earth Day festival and you have a booth, or it might be a wildlife expo, some kind of special event. Project Wild activities are easily adaptable, most of them, to booths, and there's lots of creative ways to do that. With first impressions, using the bar graph is a great way to set up as a booth where people can put a representation of themselves under each type of emoji to represent how they feel. And then maybe you speak with people about a red-tailed fox, and maybe then they have a chance to move their representation of themselves to another emoji. You can also, if you could also have just a dry erase board and have people post on there. And I bet you can think of other ways to represent this as a booth activity as well, but great for outreach. And I'm going to close it up there. And we'll have time for questions about this or other activities later. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to, let's see, is it Elena or Kathleen? I think you're doing adaptation artistry, yes? Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mark. So I'm going to talk a little bit about adaptation artistry, which is an activity that is found in our Project Wild K through 12 guide. It's aimed at upper elementary and middle school audiences, but it's very adaptable, for lack of a better word, to other audiences. So you could use it with older students, younger, and in college students as well. We've actually used it in a lot of workshops with adults. But what it is doing is focusing on the importance of adaptations for birds. And the great thing with birds is their physical characteristics really kind of stand out. They're easy to see and kind of notice and think about how they're going to help them survive. So we'll be looking at their beaks, their feet, their wings and legs, and their bright coloration or not bright coloration, and how that's going to help them survive. And then take those physical traits and connect them to where they're living, how they're getting their food, how they're behaving, how they're raising their young, all those kind of, survival methods, those behavioral traits, and started off with really just observations. So we're gonna start up a little warm up here. Is everybody ready? Okay. So as we have the next slides, I'd like you to look at the animal and describe some of the observations that you see. What are you noticing? You can type it in the chat and maybe some adaptations that you think this channel bill toucan might have to help it survive. So what's something that you notice right away? Yes. Yes, that huge beak. I mean, that's standing out right there, right? Yep, coloration, all the bright colors, the beak is curved. I like that little detail there. Good. Yellow belly on the front there. Good. These are all really great observations. Yeah, so probably for cracking open nuts. They really like to eat fruit. So they're going to use that big beak to get into fruit, and the coloration is going to help them win those colorful fruit trees. So all of these, oh, counter shading. I love that you put that. So dark on top, light on the bottom. These are all really great. And so you can show students pictures and just start there to open the conversation. Colored wings, beak, yes, wonderful. Good. So they're found in tropical areas near in trees near those fruit trees so they can get their food. They're blending in. Um, they have the beak that they can get in, and if there's large nuts that are or seeds in those fruits, that they're able to handle this. All right, let's move on to the next one. All right, this is a three-toed woodpecker. What do you notice about this bird? What are some observations that you can make? Think about beak, wings, feet, coloration. Yes, feet to grip. Those three toes are helping it hold onto the tree. Great. Good. Very dark and spotted. Yes, that coloration really gonna help for camouflage. Mottled coloring, beak for cutting. Yes, that beak. That beak, chisel like that's a great word. Short, pointy, pointed. Right. They're gonna use that just like a chisel. They're gonna use it just that tool to hammer in, to chisel in, and to get their food right out of the tree. So the beetles or the grubs that they're wanting to get to, they're gonna use that tool. Woodpeckers are fascinating. I have seen so many different types. My favorite are the pileated woodpeckers, which are huge. Um, and whenever they're pecking, wood shards are flying everywhere because they're doing such a good job with their beak to get into what they want. So yes, definitely using all of this. Oh, stiff tail. I like that one. So it can prop itself up. Good leverage. Great observations. All right, let's move on to the next one. Turkey vulture. All right, this one is a favorite. Um, what do you see? What do you observe by looking at the picture? Um, Red head. Yes, that head is featherless. Exactly. So think about how that could be an adaptation. Why wouldn't you want feathers on your head, right? Big, large wingspan, right? Allowing them to glide. They'll use the thermals, right? They'll float around to be able to see and smell what they're looking for. Large wings for flight. Yes. Oh, the spreading. That's a good detail to notice too. Very good. Their feet are kind of tucked under, so they're hard to see, but allowing them to move around. Great. I like the V that the black makes on their wings. That's always identification for me when I'm out and you see them around. So we have black vultures and turkey vultures, and the V is the TV, right? The turkey vulture. So great. But yes, no feathers on that head. So when they're getting in and eating the dead animals, right? They're scavengers. So they're eating those animals and they stay clean, right? They don't get all the mess on their feathers because they have a featherless head. One time we were driving through the mountains of Virginia, and the road's pretty curvy, and we had to slam on brakes because there were, I thought, hundreds of turkey vultures standing in the road with their wings all out, but they're all gathered around um, probably a dead deer from roadkill, but they were all together. It was just so impressive, and we just stopped and we watched for quite a while. It was really great to see. But great job with seeing the birds first. But the next part of adaptation artistry is to create your own bird. So what you would do with the students is have them think about all of those traits, right? The feathers, the coloration, the beak, all of those things, and then create their own. So they need to come up with a name, where the bird lives, what it eats. So maybe that might determine the kind of beak that they have, how it moves. So maybe that's the wings or the legs. Do the males and females look different? How are they raising their young? Do they have nests? Are they laying eggs on the side? Maybe they don't have eggs. I don't, they get to use their own, individual ideas and come up with adaptations for their bird. And when you have this with students, depending on your age group, you can have all different supplies out. So the activities suggest, clay, markers, paper. This picture you can see here, we have, puffballs and feathers and paper bags. This was actually a teacher workshop, so you can see what some teachers worked on. But allowing them to be creative and then come back and write down all of those things on where their bird is and how it's using those physical traits to survive. All right, so we're gonna practice. Next slide. So this is an activity, and then Mark or Elena, if one of you could put that in the chat. This is an activity that we have in our Project Wild online course. So it's very interactive, and it starts out, and you can there's the link. You can go, oh, should be a link for the Build-A-Bird. There it is, great. So if you go to this, you'll see this page. And if you click on the left where it says head, tail, feet, beak, you can click through and it'll cycle through options. So it'll give you about 5 or 6 options for the head, for the tail, for the feet, and the beak. And you can create within this online program your own bird. Um, and then the next button that's down there, you'll see on your page, if you're there now, share your adaptation artistry. That will take you to a Padlet site where it's shared, and you can type in all your information on where it lives and what it eats and all of those physical traits that you have described and shown in your drawing that then you can kind of describe. So Elena, if you go to the next slide, I have the Padlet, just an example of our Padlet site. So there it is. And you can see people have posted different birds that they've created, the fish catching bird and the large-throated marsh bird, and someone actually included a painting. That's fantastic. Um, so it's a way to share in a community here through our online community in this course, but also you can get an opportunity to go ahead and put stuff in there too and just kind of play around with it. So if anybody wants, they can put theirs in there. Let's see. There are a couple other things I wanted to share. How's everybody doing with creating their bird, though? Are you having fun with this? Is it fun to create? Are you thinking of ways that you could use this with students of all ages, really? Great. That's awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Well, while you're working on that, there are a couple other things I wanted to mention. Elena, the next slide, we have a similar activity in our aquatic wild guide. And so obviously this is all aquatic species. This activity is called Fashion a Fish. So it goes through the adaptation process similarly, but then what you do with the students is you give them fish adaptation cards. And so they're given a mouth and a body shape and a coloration, and they are creating their own fish with those traits that they've been given. And so they might come up with something pretty wild and creative because of the cards they're given. So it's kind of a fun way to talk about those different physical traits, but also give them an opportunity to be creative and kind of think about actual utilized, physical traits in nature. So it goes back to the science, and then maybe they can also research specific fish that have these traits. So, so yes, awesome. Different fins. I love it. So, this, I just wanted to make you aware that this is in existence. It's in our Aquatic Wild book, and these 4 student pages are on our website that you could easily download and use with your students and make copies that way. One more thing, next slide. I wanted to share with you how we utilize this um, at a booth at a tabletop event where we have, you've got tons of people coming by. We have this little, it's like a magnetic whiteboard, and we had all these pieces, all the little shapes there on the table. And so what people would do, they would pick up an adaptation, they'd pick up a benefit, and they'd pick up an example and try to put them in the right category to make them line up. So it's an interactive way to talk about adaptations. It's a talking point with people that are coming through. It's hands-on, and they might be learning something too, something maybe they didn't know already about different adaptations of fish. So, you know, with all of our Project Wild activities, they really are adaptable to different situations and different audiences. So we encourage people to utilize what we have and to make it your own for your situation. So, and we will be sharing, we already have the adaptation artistry download there. So you can, we'll share it with you so you can have the PDF of the activity for you to use.
And
Thank
Kathleen,
you.
I took the link to the PDF out of the chat, but I'll
Oh,
put it
okay.
back in at the end.
That
We're
sounds great.
hopeful
Thanks,
that you
Mark.
wait to do all that downloading later.
That sounds good. Great. Thank you so much. All right. Well, I will hand it over to Elena to talk about one more activity.
All right, thanks, Kathleen. I just want to say adaptation artistry is one of my favorite activities. And every time I do a workshop, it people love that activity. No matter if I do the fish or if I focus on the birds, it's just such a really creative way to get students and adults thinking about what adaptations mean for specific animals and how a changing habitat could be a problem for some species. So, and then I will say this is actually my whiteboard that you're looking at now. I am not a fish person, so I don't think I have the correct answers as it's supposed to be, but we do have the correct answers in the guide, and I paste it on the back of that board so I can always check myself. But just a little hint for those of you that might be doing this at a booth or a festival or event. Um, let's see. Undergraduates, absolutely. We have quite a few college professors that use Project Wild with their undergraduate natural resource students, as well as pre-service educators. And it's always surprising how when they get to college, they don't necessarily remember having learned some of what we would consider basic information about ecology or biology. So it's always good to review it. And then again, if they're working with their hands, if they're moving, they are more likely to remember it versus just reading about an article or reading from a book about it. So, okay, so enough of me loving on adaptation artistry. Let's go to the next activity. So migration headache. We've been here for a good 40 minutes already. This is your opportunity to get up and move around and stretch. And I'm going to give you a couple of assignments in just a minute. But this activity is called Migration Headache, and it's through our Aquatic Wild Guide. And it's another one of my favorite activities to do online. So I have probably a bunch of biologists here in the audience. What is migration? Can you put that in the chat for me? What does it mean to migrate? Anybody putting anything in the chat? Can move some distances from one location to another. Yeah, for resources such as food, could be breeding, could be habitat change, right? And that's why they're migrating. Can you give me some examples of animals that migrate? Yeah, we've got salmon, the Arctic tern. Yeah, whales, humpback whales, gray whales. Yeah, monarchs, caribou. So many animals migrate. And on Saturday, I'm actually going to do a vernal pool study to look at salamander migration. So they migrate maybe long distances as far as they're concerned, but perhaps not long distances as far as we're concerned. But they do migrate from pool to pool, again, to look for resources, to lay eggs, and they're just about getting ready to do that. Oh, sandhill cranes. If you've seen sandhill crane migration, it's pretty phenomenal here. Okay. So someone here mentioned the Arctic tern. Which animal do you think migrates the longest distance? Is it the Arctic tern, the blue whale, or the red knot? Yeah. Yeah, y'all are my peeps. You know the answer to this one. So I do find the red knot very fascinating because it does migrate quite a distance here. It stops here in the Chesapeake Bay, which is where I'm located, right on my beach. They lay their eggs, and then around May, June time is when the horseshoe crabs will come up on the beach. They will lay their green eggs just in time for the red knots to time with their migration, and the red knots will fill up on the horseshoe crab eggs. So red knots one of my favorite, but yeah, the Arctic tern has the longest migration, and basically they pretty much go from pole to pole for their migration. We have Canada geese here, and there are four main flyways. We have the Atlantic Flyway along the East Coast, the Mississippi Flyway, the Central Flyway, and then the Pacific Flyway. We have in the Chesapeake Bay, at least, and probably other areas too, we do have resident geese. And that is a huge problem because it just means there's more feces in the water year round, which can lead to algal blooms in the summertime. Okay, so you all are going to migrate. So here's your chance. Again, we've been sitting here for about 45 minutes. If you don't already have 2 pencils or pens, a paper clip, a scrap sheet of paper, and a penny. And I'll go ahead and try to fill air while you all maybe run and try and go get those items. But again, just to reiterate, Project Wild is not the kind of learning where you just sit around. We always try to get kids up and moving as much as possible. And we believe that kids learn by connecting movement into what they're doing and really experiencing it. So again, 2 pencils or pens, a paper clip, a scrap sheet of paper, and a penny, because the next set of activities, we're going to have you migrate. And it's the honor system here. We're trying to do this online, and I'll show you how to do this in person at the end. Okay, so here we go. So here's your first scenario. You are going from your wintering grounds, maybe down here in Florida, Georgia area, to a stopover. All right. A canal was constructed to remove boat traffic from a river that was used by a large number of waterfowl years ago. It is returning to its natural state. Migratory birds head north from their wintering grounds, and if you can stand up and face north within 30 seconds, you can migrate to the next stopover. So I'll give you 30 seconds starting now. Okay, 15 more seconds. If you can figure out which way is north. I have a giant bay right by me, so I know it's easy for me to see north, south, east, west. Okay, all right, time's up. So again, this is the honor system. If you were able to figure out which way was north, and I don't know how you would know, again, if you don't have a compass on you, but we're going to go to the next stop. Okay, stop over to breeding. Ugh, hydrilla, an invasive aquatic plant, has taken over a wetland in Maryland. While you will eat it, you would much rather eat native plants. Plus, it decreases the amount of other critters you consume. If you can pick up a paper clip with 2 pencils and use only one hand in 60 seconds, like a bird using its beak to get food, you will survive to your nesting area. And so, on your mark, get set, and go. Kind of like chopsticks here. But I think, I don't know, challenging. Okay, so far we're at 20 seconds. I think chopsticks would be easier than 2 pencils. Okay, we're at 40 seconds. All right, another 5 seconds. And stop. All right. So hopefully you are all able to pick up your paper clip. We'll go on to the next one. Prime waterfowl habitat has been severely damaged by the use of a marsh as an irrigation pond. You have 60 seconds to find something that starts with W like water, but it can't be water. Okay, and go. All right, maybe you're wearing something like that starts with the W. And I won't ask you to come on camera to prove to me that you have something that starts with the W, but when I do teacher workshops, I do ask them to prove to me that they found something that starts with the W. And I can't even think of something other than maybe a watch that starts with W at the moment. But maybe you have something lying around the office or the house. Oh, wipes. There you go. I like that. Okay, time's up. That was 60 seconds. Water lily. Yay. All right. White. Oh, wine. Okay. Wine, whisk, web. I got stuck. Oh, white. Well, I went to wine. Sorry. That's kind of what I have on my mind. All right. Okay. Oopsie. Scenario 4, from stopover to wintering. So we're going to complete one full cycle. Woohoo! The owners of a fragile wetland area agree to place their lands in a wetland conservation program. If you can stand on 1 foot, as many birds do when they rest, or to keep warm for 60 seconds without holding on to anything, or without putting your foot down on the first try, you survive to migrate south. Okay, and go. And I have to say, this is where we lose a fair number of people. All right, stand on one foot for 60 seconds. You got about 45 seconds to go. Quite the challenge. Not as challenging as actually flying that many miles through storms and this winter we've had here on the East Coast. It's been challenging. And even if you don't make it, we do want you to stay with us for the next set of migration, the next year. All right, 10 more seconds. All right, and that's 1 minute. All right. So, oh, somebody got a walking stick. Nice. You have a fun house, Jerry. Okay. All right. So here's the next scenario. From the wintering, we're going back now, year 2. A timber company has agreed to preserve a forested wetland in exchange for tax credits. That's a balance between timber and conservation. If you can balance a pencil on your fingertip for at least 30 seconds, you can keep migrating north. And go. I feel like this is like a middle school a middle school test here. I think this is another place where we lose a lot of people here. A lot of birds. Good for senior citizens. Yeah. We need some extra help. Okay. All right. And stop. We might should make that like 5 seconds. I don't know. All right. Long-term temperature changes due to climate change are affecting macroinvertebrate communities. This makes finding enough food very difficult. If you can put your hand on your shoulder and a coin on your elbow, then swing your arm down to catch the coin from your elbow in 30 seconds, you can migrate from your stopover grounds. This is like one of those bar tricks, right? Okay, and go. So this is what the penny is for. Hopefully this is getting you up and moving around. Or maybe another middle school kind of game, right? I don't know. Kathleen, you have middle school kids. Do they do these kinds of things?
They would love this. And then the
All
competition comes into play. Yeah, it's great.
All right. Time. Okay. So, see, we're teaching all kinds of skills and talents in Project Wild. All right, next one. We're almost done. In 1987, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service began banning the use of lead shot for hunting waterfowl. This reduced waterfowl deaths due to lead poisoning, and lead is considered a heavy metal. While also a metal, copper is used to make pennies. If you can find a penny that is from 1987 or older in 60 seconds, you can migrate from the breeding grounds. And go. This is a challenging one, and we might need to change this activity because they're not even making pennies anymore, right? Poor Abe Lincoln. Also, 1987 is just longer and longer ago every year. I was in high school. All right, got about 30 seconds. And it's even rare that I even have cash in my wallet anymore these days. All right, about 10 more seconds. Hopefully you're coming back from running around the house. All right, and stop. Okay, here we go. Heading home here. Stop over to the wintering ground. A landowner has agreed to reflood fields after harvesting, increasing acreage for wintering birds. but it can be a long flight from the stopover grounds to wintering grounds. If you can build and fly a paper airplane that travels at least 10 feet, you survive to migrate from the stopover grounds to the wintering grounds. You have 2 minutes to build and test your paper airplane. Okay, all right, let's go. That's what the scrap piece of paper is for. So you can build your paper airplane and test it as many times as you want. And I think I'm gonna try one myself. I'm gonna go for maybe a jet version here. All right. So we can go, like, I have a simple one here, but I know a lot of people that like to put an extra fold flap in there. Okay, you got just over a minute to go and test your plane. All right, here's mine. I'm gonna give it a try. Oop. Hopefully your test flight was better than mine. Got about 45 seconds. Try and get that 10 feet. Hopefully your supervisor doesn't walk into your office as you're flying paper airplanes. About 15 more seconds. I think my supervisor would just think it's a regular day whenever he walks in my office. All right, and stop. Okay, so hopefully you got an idea of what some of the things that you can do with your students here. And again, we're doing this online, and I'll show you some other adaptations that we have. Of course, it's important to graph the data. So if I were working with students, I would definitely keep track of, what students were able to make it to each stopover. So you get some graphing and some math in there as well. In person, you would designate, say, the blue as the wintering ground and the green as the breeding ground and the purple as the stopover. And so what I would do is I have some hula hoops, and students have to make it from one section to the next, and then there's students in the middle trying to tag them, right? And so that's how they would get to the next area. And then just for fun, what I'll do sometimes is I might remove some of the hula hoops. And students have to get at least 1 foot into the hula hoop in order to be, safe. So I'll add hula hoops or I'll take away hula hoops depending on the particular situation. So again, getting kids up and moving around, hopefully like you had a chance to do just now. So in the chat, if you could name one, I know it says two, but just put one human activity that could affect migration for birds. And this is a picture I have on the Chesapeake Bay of an osprey. They come back every March, and you can see we have large barge ships going through here. Yeah, wind turbines, development, lights. We have an activity called Lights Out as well that talks about light pollution. Great, thank you. How about a natural activity that could impact bird migration? Smoke, the winter storms that we just had, certainly a changing climate. And then we won't go into this one, but why is it important to protect habitat across a species range? Well, you can see that if we only protect one area, but not their entire migratory range, then there could be a big crash in population. People were mentioning monarch butterflies earlier. So they think that could be one problem with the monarchs is, their breeding grounds or their wintering grounds are a big protected area. But along the way, when they go to their breeding grounds and over their migration, if they're having fewer and fewer places that have milkweed or that have other nectaring plants that they can use, that can impact their population. So yeah, floods, deforestation. Yeah. So extensions on this could be migration mapping, having students use maps to look at where birds are going. Mapping is a really challenging skill for students because they don't necessarily travel very much. Most of their travel is between school and home. And so getting them a feel for where they are in the world and what it's like for animals to move throughout the world is an important skill. And as people mentioned at the chat, the impacts of climate change on birds and other migratory species. And then you can have students write a travel log for their bird, like where did the bird go when they went there? When they went to a stopover, what was it like? You could have them look up information about those particular towns or areas, maybe include pictures as well. So I think this is where I hand it back to Mark.
Yes. All right. So in about the next 8 minutes or so, Kathleen and I are both going to wrap it up and hopefully have some time for questions at the end. But what I wanted to say before I talk about this Project One online course is that the activity migration headache that Elena had just demonstrated, that is a good example of how we at Project Wild were teaching teachers and educators how to simulate ecological phenomena or simulate social phenomena to help us learn about ecosystems and help us become better stewards. There's a lot of ways to simulate phenomena. It could be very abstract, like with paper clips and pennies and pencils, or it could be more direct, like running in a field and trying to get to a stopover habitat represented by a hula hoop. That's a little more concrete. But they're all good, and simulations are very popular in Project Wild. We also have other kinds of activities like field investigations, where students are going outside to collect data to answer a question about their local environment, or perhaps a question about what's in their schoolyard. And then we also have activities that involve research. They might involve artistic expression, like poetry or music. But simulations are definitely the ones that most folks know us by at Project Wild. All of these activities, a great way to practice them and to get more adept at using them is to go to a Project Wild professional development training. And the best way to do that is to contact your state Project Wild coordinator and find out when you can go to a face-to-face training that is being led by a certified Project Wild facilitator. And many of you might be interested in becoming a Project Wild facilitator if you want to teach other educators how to use these activities. But if you can't get to a face-to-face training, we also have this online option, which the slide that you're looking at now represents. And here's a list of some of the courses that we currently are offering. We just launched our selection for 2026. And we encourage you to take a look at those courses. There's a whole page that has descriptions about each course and how to get to them. And there is a small fee for each course. We're going to give you a free, or is it a reduced rate? Access, sorry, not free, but a really good deal on the course Room to Roam, which explores ecological connectivity, if you want to try that one out. Can you go to the next slide, please? I want to mention too, in the Project Wild guidebooks, you'll find like in the terrestrial guide and the aquatic wild guide, a lot of helpful resources in the front and the back, extensive sections that provide additional information and go more in depth about best practices and pedagogy, for example, or how to conduct field investigations, tips and tricks on various topics like using notebooks and journals. Next slide. In the back of the guide, here's a listing of the extensive appendices that we have that helps educators plan how to use Project Wild to develop, for example, certain skills with a skill index, or if they want to explore a particular topic, where can they find what activities cover that topic and the topic index. Maybe they want to plan a unit. Well, we have a unit planning suggestion. Okay, there's a section on field ethics. That's where we have the glossary. Many other topics there in the appendices, but it's a very good resource and another reason, if you can get the whole guidebook, to go to a training and get that. You can also order the guidebook if you do the online training. There's a way we provide a link for that, but we don't typically sell most of the main guidebooks without the full training. Okay, next slide. And this is where I'm going to turn it over to you, Kathleen.
Yes, so we just wanted to say thank you to all of you for joining us today and give you a 50% off of our online course. I went ahead and put the Project Wild online link in the chat so you can go and see all the courses we have available, but the discount will be for our Room to Roam course, which is, it really focuses on ecological connectivity and the importance for biodiversity, and goes into wildlife corridors and how ways we're helping after we've kind of limited conductivity. So going back in and helping the animals. And there are two Project Wild activities in there that have been adapted to kind of help with this. It's a middle school and high school audience, but definitely could be adapted to older. So the code is right there. I'll put it in the chat so you have it as well. Go ahead and try to register before April 30th. That discount code will expire then, but the course you can use all through 2026 and take the course. They're asynchronous, so you can do it when it's convenient for yourself, and yeah, get a lot out of it. So thank you so much.
And Kathleen and Elena, and at some point we want to allow people to have time to access or get a copy of the links to Dropbox so you all can download these activities, the PDFs of the activities we covered. So I think we're going to put those in the chat too. And before you leave the meeting, you probably want to copy those links so you have time to go into the Project Wild Dropbox and access those PDFs.
I can add those now.
Okay.
And ask Kathleen is doing that. I just wanted to jump in and thank you. Thank the three of you again for today's session. This has been great. I'm excited to post this online on our website and YouTube channel for others to watch in the future. And I hope that everyone that attended today got a lot out of this. I know I did. So as folks are copying links and accessing pages, I wanted to share two more quick slides if you can just briefly bear with me. Not this. Oh. There we go. Okay. So I briefly wanted to announce or remind everyone that SBNA is hosting our biannual conference this summer. We're calling it the North American Congress for Conservation and Restoration. We are co-hosting it with the Society for Ecological Restoration for the first time. So it's bound to be a big interdisciplinary fun conference. It will also take place in Milwaukee, which is a really cool city, or so I've been told by members of Project Wild. I encourage everyone who's present to attend. We really are looking for educators and folks involved in education to be present, to interact with everyone in the conference. And as a part of that, I also want to share a sort of unique presentation opportunity We will be hosting an education forum at the conference with the goal of showcasing educational materials like Project Wild in a much more interactive way. So if you're interested in presenting during the forum, I've included the QR code for our application form here. It should take you maybe 15 to 20 minutes to fill out. And we are offering a 50% registration waiver for those who are selected to present. So I encourage you all to take advantage of it too. Okay. That's it for me. Thanks again, everyone, for attending. And thanks again to Project Wild for being here today.